Hello everybody, Marty McConnell, the Off-Grid Gecko here. And so I'm going to go ahead and start off my unofficial Cordwood challenge video for the year. I've already got a pile started over there, but it's just something I'm going to do to keep track of myself through the season. I need to do some regular firewood chopping, and my tools of choice for that, this guy right here, Stihl chainsaw, and one of these two guys right here. I've got a heavier splitting axe and a regular chopping axe from Fiskars that are like my preferred go-to for splitting, just because these handles are darn near unbreakable, and the wedge shape on these kind of, I don't know, it seems to help in that regard. They split pretty easy, just pop boards open. But so I'm going to start by introducing some of the tools that I use for woodcraft. The first one that I'm going to talk about, since I already picked it up, is this. It's a Fiskars, about a 26-inch handle, I think. Yeah, 26 to 28-inch handle. I forget the name and the designation for these because they change it every time they make a new one. But all of these axes are good, and if you can find one on a bargain buy, like last year's model that some stores are clearing out to get rid of, you can actually get these for a pretty decent, like very reasonable price. They normally retail for 50 to 60 bucks, but I got this one for about 20 to 25 if I remember right, just because they were clearing out their stock on these at Walmart, and I managed to grab one before they ran out. I thought about grabbing the little hatchet too, and probably should have, because I probably could have got a matching hatchet for about 15 bucks. That may be in the cards for this year, maybe not, I don't know. I'll grab something when it goes on sale. Now, for splitting cordwood, I generally don't use a designated splitting axe. I'll use one of my regular axes, and I just split on the ground, which I split on the ground for everything. But this is like my go-to splitting axe for splitting on the ground, even though it doesn't have, normally a splitting axe will have a really wide wedge like that, versus this little skinny wedge on this one. This guy's just easier to swing, and you can pop logs all day with it without wearing yourself out, so I like that. My little hatchet is my go-to tool of choice around here for just about everything, from hammering stakes to limbing small trees, and sometimes even butchering up logs with this thing. But I also use this to carve handles, like this one, for my axes. Just basically chip these out. Anything that needs to be carved out of a stave, that's usually hatchet duty, so I try to keep this guy pretty sharp. Not going to be doing a lot of cordwood with it, but it does come in handy for like clearing up some of these cedar trees before I go to work on them. My tool of choice for the years, this is a Collins axe, actually. So it's cheap, off the shelf, generic brand from any hardware store, really. I think I got this from Ace Hardware, and from what I've heard, the experience with them in their stock form is kind of hit and miss. Like, I think I was on my first or my second tree with this axe when it was brand new, and the head came flying off the handle. I never could get it secured on there right, and then I just started snapping handles one after another. I went through 2 hickory handles, and then I just started making my own out of this red oak that's growing out here everywhere, and so far I haven't had a lot of luck. Now, this is a red oak handle on my hatchet, and it has outlasted the original fiberglass handle that came on it many times over. I have had to rehalf the head a couple times till I got it to finally stick in there in the right spot, so the length on this has been trimmed down a bit, maybe a bit more than I actually like and care for, but like I said, love this thing. This handle is my latest creation, and this has actually already survived a dozen or so small trees that I've chopped down. One big tree that I chopped down, a big cedar, big old knotty bastard too. I have had a couple of overstrikes on it, and so far it's holding up well. What that has taught me is, if you're using red oak, the grain pattern that they normally tell you to use on an axe handle, turn it 90 degrees. These medullary rays, every time I've broken a piece of red oak, it's split along a medullary ray, not along a tree ring. So with that in mind, I just went ahead and turned my billet 90 degrees, carved this handle out of it. Haven't had a lick of trouble out of it yet. There is a little split in here up by the top running this way, but hopefully that won't be an issue. But eventually, and that actually may have more to do with the little bite here on the bottom of the head than the actual wood itself. But what I may do at some point is go ahead and wrap this head. I want to get a little more use out of it before I trim it up too much, but you can tell by the finishing I've kind of smoothed things out quite a bit with a rasp. And I may not even take the time or bother with hand sanding this. I may just, you know, next time I feel like working on it, just hook up my sanding machine and just, you know, have it all down in one go. Go ahead and rebevel the bit while I'm at it. Anyways, those are the tools that I use. So my two most commonly used axes are this Collins and this Fiskars. Now my Fiskars probably doesn't chop as well as this does, and I know these things get a bad rap online from the axe snobs, but this is actually quite a handy tool. This is my truck axe. It goes with me everywhere. I've overstruck on this thing, splitting wood so many times that I can't even count them anymore, and the handle is incredibly durable. I don't care what the internet snobs say, like, I don't feel like I can break this handle. So this is my designated go-to emergency axe. It rides in the truck with me in case there's a log in my way on the road and I don't want to bust out the chainsaw. And it has been an incredibly durable tool, so I'll probably keep this forever, for at least as long as the handle lasts. And I may even get another one if I can find another one on sale, just because they're so darn durable. I don't feel like I'm ever going to break this, whereas if I break out one of my pretty axes for like odd cuts and weird things, I don't know. So I'm basically going to take these two out to the woods today with me. The advantage of a wooden handle and the advantage of this axe and why I like it so much: number one, the bit on this is much narrower. It just cuts 100 times better. Well, maybe not 100 times better, but maybe twice as good as that one for the actual cuts. And because wood gives a little bit more than fiberglass, this has got a slight bit of flex to it. I actually probably need to remove more material, but I'll do that after I get it nice and trimmed up, because this is still kind of thick. This is probably thin by most people's standards, but it's still really, really thick, and it's kind of stressed, but it doesn't shock my hands. Wood is very forgiving. It's slightly flexible, especially this oak wood that I'm using is probably more flexible than hickory will ever be. And it's just, you can go longer without that hand shock. I'm also going to be using gloves today. And I know some of you are wondering about these because I talk them up so highly and I've never mentioned a brand name. These are Forney hide gloves. They're basically a cheap glove with a nitrile coating on them from the feed store. And they work out better than, at least for my job. I'm kind of rough on gloves. I go through about a pair a week or a pair every other week, but I was going through a pair every couple days, and I was spending like $6-7 per pair on these gloves. These things are like $2 or $3 per pair, and sometimes you can find them even cheaper, and they just work. They hold up. They're solid for everything I put them through. So I tend to just buy those now. One of these days I might try out an even cheaper pair by another company and see if they kind of hold up in the same regard or not. We'll find out. So that's it. I'm going to the woods. I'm not taking this guy because this heavy splitter I mainly just use for stubborn logs. I'm not taking Mr. Hatchet. Well, I'll probably take the hatchet too, just in case. We're going to be going over here looking at some cedar trees, and I'll kind of show you my cordwood challenge plan and what I do, like how I utilize cordwood challenge for me, because I don't really, like, I'm not doing this to heat my home. When I want to heat my home, I grab the chainsaw and I tear ass through there, find dead standing oak and hickory and whatever else I can find, even pine sometimes, and I'll cut it up, and then I take one of these Fiskars axes, split it up, and stack it up over there. Starting my cordwood challenge kind of early this year because that stuff I can keep up with once it gets colder. This cordwood thing, usually I have to pick whether I want to saw logs very quickly to stack up my firewood pile or whether I want to chop for my cordwood pile. And today it's a little warm. I don't feel like chainsawing, so I'll take the axes out for a spin. So I'll take you up here, show you what we're working on. Okay, so I'll bring you over here to my pile. This is my pile of cordwood that I've got started for the year so far. So these beams are about 8 feet apart, and so if I stack this up about waist high, it'll be roughly a rick. Stack it up a little higher, it'll be 2 ricks. If it comes out to the top, maybe a rick and a half. I'm not really expecting to get a ton of wood. Like I said, I just kind of do this to sort of stay in shape and keep myself axe savvy for the year and for the years ahead. Keep myself active and moving, not taking the easy way out. And plus, it's just reassuring to know that if I needed to heat my house and all I had was an axe, like it was an end of the world scenario, then I could, you know, do it with an axe. And a lot of my tools, the handles break on them, and so knowing how to fix and repair handles, that's something I've sort of picked up, a necessary skill along the way, because if I had to pay $20 every time I broke a tool handle, like, that would run me dry even quicker than I already run dry. So the basic premise of Cordwood Challenge is to basically fell, buck, limb, split, all with an axe, stack the stuff up. The idea is to use an axe or at least a hand tool for every aspect of the tree processing process, and then work your way up, you know, to at least putting up a cord for the year. 1 cord of firewood is essentially enough to get you trained up and starting to hone your skills with the axe. So your chopping will get more accurate. You'll learn a couple of little ins and outs through actually doing. You'll probably see your blade deflect multiple times, so it'll reassure you like where that thing's going when it deflects. And it teaches you mostly safety, because axe handling is a dangerous business. And if you're going to engage in it, I recommend you start very, very lightly, smoothly. Like, don't try and put up a cord of firewood your first time out swinging an axe. It's not worth it. Take your time and watch where the axe is falling. And I'm going to go over some of those safety tips. So if you axe guys out there who might be watching have any extra comments on this or extra points that you want to add, drop them in a comment below. Anybody else watching, check those comments and see if there's any updates or anything that I missed, because everybody's pretty much got their own style when it comes to this, but there are some things in common. One of them is you can get chainmail leggings, steel toe boots and that kind of thing. I'm obviously not wearing those just to make sure you keep from getting sliced up. Another thing is just knowing where the axe is going to land and where it's going to go if it slips and it doesn't bite, because that happens more frequently than you think. Learn your cutting angles, all that kind of stuff. But safety is key, safety first. So goggles or glasses is probably a good idea too. Actually, I have a pair. I should put them on, but I'm not gonna, because I'm lazy and I guess I like to live dangerously. I don't know. But anyways, let me get started over here. I'll show you what we're cutting. Basically is all this scrubby cedar back here that has invaded the prairie on top of this hill since before I bought the property. So I work in different areas. There's one big stump over there that I cut down with an axe. That was the first tree of this season. If I don't keep these cedars in check, they're just going to continue multiplying and taking over everything. So this isn't like a forestry logging kind of thing. This is just an area I would like to someday convert back to pasture, or at least forage for goats maybe. So I chip away at it a little at a time, and I cut these little hollows out, and then I work on the bigger trees as I go as well, and just knock them down blow by blow. Usually leave a little mess like this that ends up getting turned into mulch, so when the grasses and the little flowers start coming up in the spring, like, they've got some decomposing matter to feed on. But I'm going to be starting in here today. I'm probably going to start with that little one just to make things nice and easy. First things first, with cedar, this is usually a bigger problem than with deciduous trees. Especially cedars that are grown in an open plain like this, or something that used to be prairie. When these guys came up and they were little sprouts, this was all prairie grass. So they've grown in kind of a shrubby configuration, whereas if I find one buried deep in the woods, it'll grow taller and straight, and it looks like more like what a tree is supposed to look like, whereas these guys just look like big shrubs or bushes. They've got a lot of, the bigger ones all have dead branches down at the bottom because they stop being able to get sunlight. They become useless and those branches just die off. And of course they're incredibly hard after they're dead and dry. But the first thing we want to do with a tree, any tree, but particularly with cedar trees, is we want to knock down a bunch of these little limbs. So what I'll do with a cedar tree, whether I'm using an axe, a hatchet, or a chainsaw, is I'll try to find myself a way to weasel in where I can get as close to the trunk as possible, and then I'll just start knocking these guys down. Looks like I can get in over here pretty easy. Something like that. So now I've got the back end knocked out, and I can basically stand right next to the trunk, and then I can work my way around it like this. Safety things to keep in mind, whether you're swinging with a hatchet or an axe, going over your head is incredibly dangerous because you've got a longer stroke, and if that thing comes down, it can pop you right in the leg full force and not only break your leg, but possibly, you know, lop off a limb bad enough that you're not going to be hauling yourself out of the woods. But even when you're swinging with a hatchet, anytime you're swinging, you want to keep your body like off to the side of where the swing is. So if I'm here and Mr. Hatchet's here, I want the tree in between us. So if I get a glancing blow, it's going to stay on that side of the tree and it's not going to come back and hit me. If the tree's over here and I'm chopping right here and I get a glancing blow, or it just goes through a branch way too easy and comes straight down, it's going to go into my leg. So just try to keep in mind, if you have to go slower, and keep in mind like where you want the axe to, like where's it going to fall if you miss, or if something happens, where's the momentum going, what direction is it headed, if there's something it can hit where it'll deflect off of, which way is it going to deflect. Again, if the tree's over here and it deflects, it's coming this way. If it's on the opposite side and it deflects, it's going that way. So you want to keep it like everything moving away from your body as much as possible. And that's that. So now we get to the fun part. So when you get into the process of actually chopping, and yes, I know the camera's turned sideways, that's what I've got. There's a couple things you want to consider. Number one, where your swing's coming from. If I swing right now, I'm going to be banging into this branch behind me. So I need to take that branch out of the equation. Right, so the key being anything that could potentially deflect your blow, you want to move it out of the way as much as reasonably achievable, and as much as possible. It's getting hot already. You want to remove all these little branches and twigs around the tree as much as possible, or reasonably achievable, as I'll call it, because they can get in the way, deflect your blow. When you're picking where to cut on a tree, height is kind of crucial. Anything above about waist high, you're getting into sort of a danger zone up here because you're swinging up on your upcuts, and there's just more potential for something to go wrong. So not a good way to start out with an axe, I find, is about somewhere between your knee and your waist, and you want to choose a location on the tree itself where there are relatively few knots. So for most trees, that's not really a problem, because down here at the bottom on most trees you don't have a lot of branches growing out. It's just a straight trunk, you know, till you get to about eye level at least. Especially in the woods with those canopy trees, you know, it might be 30 feet to the first limb sometimes. So it's not hard to find a spot. On these cedars it is a little tricky because there are knots everywhere and it makes cutting a little difficult. Know where your swing is going to go. So if I come down on the tree like this and I miss, most likely the axe is going to hit to the side. You know, it's going to hit, it's going to twist, and it's going to come off either down, in this case right between my legs, or it may come off to the side here. So the best place to stand is probably behind the tree, swinging this way. It's not super convenient, but if you're starting off and you don't know where these axe blows are going to go and you don't have good control, it's best to just stay as far away from the moving blade as possible, or you're going to take yourself out, and you don't want to do that. We don't want to see anybody get hurt. So, or stand over here and make sure your force is concentrated kind of this way into the tree. Again, if it glances, 9 times out of 10 it's coming right through here. In this case, it may hit this little knot here on the bottom and deflect off to the right, and that would be a bad thing for me standing over here. So most of the time, if this was a straight trunk, I'd be standing off to this side, and I'd leave plenty of room for the axe to just go through between my body and the tree. In this case, I want to be on the other side of the tree, which is a little bit more of a bitch to cut, but you know, in the interest of being safe. And when you swing, you want to pick a spot basically on the tree somewhere. So I'm going to try and cut it about right there, maybe a little lower than that, right around this knot basically, because it's the smallest knot around. The other side of the tree looks pretty clear there. When you're picking a spot to cut your notch, also what side of the tree you're on. Like if I cut a notch this way, the tree's going to be mostly inclined to either go this way or this way. So in other words, I don't have to worry too much about it falling on the camera, unless it's just heavy in that direction for whatever reason, and you break it out and it's just going to fight you and it's going to go that way no matter what. Not a whole hell of a lot you can do about it without some wedges, but that's sort of an advanced topic. So mainly keep it orthogonal to whatever you don't want to kill. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get on this side of the tree. I'm going to mark out my spot. I want to hit it right about there. And I want to come down at about a 45-degree angle to the tree. That's going to knock out the biggest, best chance of knocking out wedges. And again, if I miss strike, this could go down like this, and you can take light hits even and just kind of see what direction the axe is going to go. So if I was standing like I normally stand, actually I'd probably still be clear of that, but you know, there's no chance in risking it. It's got a range anywhere from here out to here because of that little splay. So I'm just going to go ahead and stand behind the direction where it can hit, and I'll reach across it a little bit. And I like to start off taking light swings, that way if you're over striking, so in this case I'm a little too close, then you can do it on a light hit and you're not going to bust your axe handle out on the first swing. Just take a couple light swings, get familiar with where you're at, and then dig in basically. And your main goal here is to try and hit, I'm taking way more blows than I need to really, but to emphasize a point, your main goal is to hit basically the same spot. And you can see my aim is way off. It's the beginning of the season, but that's kind of what you're shooting for, is the same spot, the same area. Like pick a target and being able to hit it consistently, and then you'll get a nice shapely little wedge. And then when you come from the bottom, you just bust out all those little chunks. My bottom accuracy is better than my top. And in an ideal perfect world, you would have two smooth planes here going in at a 45-degree angle, and get to a wedge point. Now these aren't about the middle of the tree, and then you can knock the back out too. I'm going to go a little deeper because these aren't really 45 degrees, so I've got some room to play. Again, just swinging light. I'm not trying to kill the tree. I'm trying to get my aim sort of lined up. And now I want the tree to fall that way, so there are a couple things you can do. You can push on it a little bit, see if it'll break. This one isn't going to yet, but basically come around to the other side of the tree, and now I want to try and knock a straight wedge, you know, this way. So I'll come down a swing, and then I'll come in, and hopefully that'll remove enough tree that I can just push it over, or it'll fall over on its own, hopefully the right direction that I want it to go. This branch is in the way. Now on this side, I don't have to worry about having a little limb down there. So if I get a glancing blow, it's going to be coming straight down. So. And there she goes. That easy. Just go in here and knock this guy off. Anytime you're limbing, the best place to be is on the opposite side of the tree, and the best way to swing is from the bottom to the top. Especially once this guy's off the ground, that danger overhead swinging is past. Make it easy on yourself, because these are going to break easier coming from the bottom, and you want to cut them off as close to the trunk as possible. So, and again, glancing blows, like stay behind the axe. Don't get anywhere where you're in the line of fire. Just run that sucker up. If you are going to be on the same side, it's best to stay in front of whatever you're chopping and have the axe actually make the cut behind you. That way, even if it deflects, it's not coming at you, it's going away from you. And you also want to try and learn some left-handed chopping skills. Limbing is a good time for that, because naturally, if I wanted to chop this right-handed, then I got to get in here, and it's just weird and awkward to swing this way. So I can try and do this left-handed instead, and just kind of guide this guy all the way down the tree. That's a bigger limb. And again, light swings. I'm not swinging hard. You don't need to be He-Man over here. It's not, you know, a battle to see who can get it done the fastest. I'm just out here enjoying the woods and having a good time. Alright, bucking. So bucking is basically breaking the log into parts, and this is going to take a lot of time. So what you want to do is mark a spot on your log. It actually has very little red heartwood in it. And then what I do is I'll put my feet on the log to kind of balance it and brace it in place. Also, keep your toes behind the plane of the log, okay? Because whether you're going this way or this way, you're asking for trouble. You know, if my toes are out here, that's going right into my foot. So you want to stay behind. I usually just put the very tips of my toes on the log. If it's a bigger log and I'm swinging toward the middle, I'll actually get up and stand on top of it. But smaller logs like this, I usually just brace from behind with my toes, and then I mark my spot a little bit with one light swing. Again, kind of even up and get a feel for the distance. And my aim sucks. And then start making a little 45-degree cut. And then pop from the other side. And then pop from the other side. And just go back and forth, making your little V and doing your little cutout. And just get all them little chips out. Then you can start from the other side if you want to. Go ahead and knock that log off. But I usually like doing one side down a little further, just because it makes it easy to lop it from the other side. And I just got a sense of trouble from my axe. What happened? She won't tell me. I think she moved about 1/10 of a millimeter. Now the other side you can try and lop. Again, if you're going to do this, be in a position where if this thing hits with a glancing blow, it's not coming at you. Alright, and then you want to aim for the point on your wedge, come in at an angle, and knock into it like that. If you can't lop it off with a single blow, then it's time to try the other side. Now I've got a trunk over here in my way. I'm trying to avoid him. And then that guy will split off like that. Put this guy lined up on his side like this, and you want to bring your axe down kind of controlled, straight in the middle. One at the front, party in the back, and that guy's popped open. So that's the easy way. That's the way that's a little more versatile. And then if you want to practice the other way, you can always try and get your aim on by cutting through the middle of this guy once you've already broken it. And if I could hit the middle without hitting that other piece, then I get right through there. I'm also not putting any force behind this because I don't want to spray this guy toward the camera, but just a nice easy cut. She'll pop right open. You know, I get a little bit put up this day, a little bit put up that day, then I go work on other stuff and then come back. But I mean, this is one of the most ancient tools of human civilization right here. And it's something that I think a lot more people need to learn how to use, especially if they want to be bushcrafty and woodsy. If you can't swing an axe, in my opinion, you're not bushcrafting very well. But that's just my opinion. You can disagree, that's fine. Anyways, I'm gonna go. If you want to learn more about axe chopping, I'm probably going to be doing lots of videos about axes just because it's that season. Axes, chainsaws, cutting, splitting, stacking up my firewood pile, and maybe splitting some more staves and just whatever, all kinds of odd little things. Stay tuned, don't forget to subscribe, and we'll be in touch. Marty the Off-Grid Gecko signing off.